Early results from Sierra Leone's presidential election show President Julius Maada Bio is leading with 60% of the votes counted. The 59-year-old is running for his second term against 12 opponents. His biggest rival is All People's Congress Party candidate Samura Kamara, who narrowly lost to Bio in the last election in 2018. The opposition APC is accusing government forces of attacking its supporters. The Election Commission earlier said its officials were beaten or intimidated. Sierra Leoneans fear more unrest could occur as results are announced. If none of the 13 candidates secures 55% of the votes cast, a runoff would take place between the top two candidates. Joining us now is Dr. Kester Ono, a senior research fellow at Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, NIIA, military veteran and member, NIBET 27, ECOMOG peacekeeping mission in Liberia and Sierra Leone. Dr. Ono is also a great Zekite. Good morning, Dr. Ono. Welcome to the show.
You had to drag this great Zekite in, right?
Good morning, Chief William. And good morning, my dear.
Good morning.
Anyway, I like that.
Good morning.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to this program.
You are welcome. You know, on this table, the popular phrase, great Malabite. But, you know.
Zekite is now coming about.
Well, we have a Zekite. Quite a good privilege.
Thank you
considering the distinction represented by Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe.
Thank you, sir.
Anyway, let's ask you, what are the big issues in the Sierra Leonean election? They went to the polls on Saturday.
21st.
We expect the results today because results are supposed to be announced within 48 hours. What, in your view, are the big issues in this particular election? A repeat of 2018, perhaps?
Well, the Chief Electoral Commissioner has actually said that within the next 24 hours, that the total result will be out. As we are discussing now, about 60% of the results are out. And in that 60%, the incumbent president of the Sierra Leone, that is Julius Amadou Bio, is leading the poll. But there has been allegation, both from international observers, that there are a lot of electoral violence, and they talk about intimidation of voters. And these are some of the issues. Even the opposition parties, like the APC, the leading opposition party, All People's Congress, Samura Kamara, is equally accusing the electoral umpire that they are not transparent. However, the international community, both the European Union and the Carter Institute, they have equally called for transparency in the election. So we are now waiting, all hands crossed. We want to see what maybe the next few hours we give birth to.
All right, something curious happened whereby the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Kone, announced the results halfway, partial results. And a number of observers have said that this is quite unusual. Why did he rush to announce results without the complete collation of results? Hence, we see who is ahead, and we know who's not, we know who's come second. But the big question is, why the rush? Why was he in a hurry to announce the results before the complete collation of the declared results? And also, are you confident that the president would get his 55% required to win?
Well, if you look at the 2018 election, it was highly contested. The president won with a narrow margin. And from the look of things in this current election, that is looking at the way things are moving, there may be some issues, especially the issue of electoral, because electoral violence has been reported in about 109 constituencies. And the APC equally accused the electoral umpire that in 3 districts that there were, issues concerning the election. But just like we all know, going by election in Africa, there will always be issue. But I believe that at the end of the day, some of these issues will be ironed out.
All right. So how about the early results announcements?
Well, the early result announcement, I don't see anything wrong with it. However, I expected that as results keep trickling in, that the announcement would have continued. But this break in the announcement, that is the reason why both the European Union observers and the Carter Institute are calling on the electoral umpires for them to be transparent in their activities, so as to, boost the confidence the people have already reposed on them.
I mean, a lot of people are in Sierra Leone with feelings from people you call on ground. I call on ground, I should say, are beginning to say this might turn out to be a very long process, because it is when they announce the result, people will now rebuff and said, no, what you did was not good, because there was massive voter suppression, there were all forms of intimidation. It was said that Maada Bio used his military might, owing to the fact that he used to be a top military officer during the time of Valentine Strasser, to be able to suppress other people and be able to get his way across. I mean, what do you see about that impending, disagreement that is going to happen in Sierra Leone as we speak? And the ruling party is not addressing all of this.
It is expected that in an election like this, there will obviously be disagreements. However, when you look at the issue in Sierra Leone, considering their experience, because they had a long civil war, that was from 1992, and they ended it in 2002.
And it's still a very fluid country.
Yes, and since then, about 5 elections has taken place. Or I think this is the 5th one that is now taking place. So when you look at things there, it's obvious that things are in fragile state. And if it is not managed properly, it may escalate. And looking at maybe the insecurity quagmire that we have in West Africa, West African region as it is now, we don't need any other crisis, because whatever happens in Sierra Leone will actually affect other neighboring countries. So I believe that the electoral umpire, even the incumbent administration, they should be very, very meticulous in handling things. Just like you said, yes, it's obvious that the power of incumbency play a very prominent role in elections in West Africa and in Africa as a whole. You understand? But I believe that both with the vested interest in the election, talking about maybe all the foreign interests that are involved, then even the ECOWAS bodies that are involved, I believe that at the end of the day, things will be done. However, let's remember that even the incumbent president cannot be declared as the winner of the election if he doesn't have the 55% of the valid vote counted. So we look, after 14 days, if he cannot get that 55% at the end of the election, at least there will be a runoff election between the two leading party. So that
was the case in 2018.
Yes, sir.
And he ended up winning with 51.8%. Now, but the big issue here is the violence. On Sunday, there was tear gassing, gunshots at the headquarters of the All People's Congress. And before then, the All People's Congress had called these people out to protest. And now, Dr. Kamara is telling us that whatever the outcome is, he will not accept, because the Electoral Commission failed to use projectors to make the tallying of votes transparent. At what point should West African leaders begin to intervene so that we don't have a blowout in Sierra Leone? Because as you said, if there's crisis in that country, we'll be back to square one 21 years after. What should West African leaders do? I know that observers are there, but is there any role that ECOWAS can play at this point, even before the declaration of the result?
If we are talking about the roles that ECOWAS will play at this point, obviously we have a robust, peace mechanism. Even before the African Peace and Security Architecture evolved, we as a sub-regional organization or regional economic community, we have a robust, peace and security architecture, that has actually spelled out, the various modus operandi that we are going to, use in intervening in such issues. However, these things are only on paper. If you look at maybe the recent happening in West Africa, it's beyond election. Nigeria, we just ended our election, and you can see the atmosphere. It's beyond election. And if you look at maybe the level of intolerance among politicians, and you equally see the way things are moving, creating serious crisis of insecurity, we realize that the major problem is not just about election, it's about poverty, in the land. And this poverty has been weaponized so that they can manipulate the masses just the way they like. So I think we have to come to terms, with the issue of good governance. Because by the time we have good governance, it will help this society to create enabling environment for a good election to take place. Yesterday, I was talking in a forum, I told them that yes, it's good to have maybe so many memorandum of understanding and put a lot of things on paper. But the moment we don't have good governance, it will create crisis. So this is actually the problem. We need to have good governance to build our institutions in West Africa. Because as long as we have weak institutions, this problem will keep on arising. Thank you very much.
All right, talking about good governance, the current president who's seeking a second term has led a nation that has high unemployment rate, high inflation, economy in distress, yet wants to run again. On what grounds? What's the justification? And again, as we've heard, is in an early lead. You talk about the issue of governance, the issue of leadership. Who do we blame in this circle? Is it the people who keep going to the polls to vote for the individual, or the fact that people are not able to hold their leaders to a higher account?
Okay, we have to start by saying that it's not about the people. We are even getting to a level in West Africa where maybe the votes of the common men may not even count again. So it's not just about going to vote. You understand? We have, in both in West Africa and in Africa, we are now seeing leaders that are insensitive about the plight of the people. So they just occupy the position, not because of what they will offer, maybe because of their own personal aggrandizement. So to satisfy their maybe quest for power. And like I said previously, what we have in many African states is not just about governance, it's about state capture, where you see a group of people that are now using the state for their personal aggrandizement to satisfy both their cronies and their personal interest. So even if people vote or not, we are now getting to the level where maybe the vote of the people doesn't count again.
So we need to be very careful with Sierra Leone because, and I'm going to snowball into your former life with ECOMOG, because we know how elections are touchy. The bastion of stability in West Africa was Ivory Coast. Election plunged Ivory Coast into chaos. We all remember, this morning we're talking about Wagner Group. We remember Anti-Seleka and Anti-Balaka. I mean Seleka and Anti-Balaka in Central African Republic. Elections and power struggle between Francois Bozize and Patassi led to the beginning of the crisis over there. So when you look at it deeply, elections are very important. Number one, how do you feel now that we need to call on the Russians to come and settle our internal problem with Wagner? Secondly, what can we do to resuscitate ECOMOG to be able to step in the gap in the space of crisis on the African continent? Because ECOMOG did a good job then.
Yes, ECOMOG, without gainsaying, did a very marvelous job, both in Liberia and in Sierra Leone. Because we paid a very great price for the job that we did there. If you are talking about, I don't want to, delve into Russia issue now, because from my perspective, when we are talking about maybe the Wagner Group and their mutiny, I look at it from a different perspective. Because for him to carry out a mutiny, and at the end of the day, they had a truce. And Putin just came up that
it was funny.
That he has forgiven him. Yes. So, and at the end of the day, even Belarus, that is an ally to Russia, agreed to accept him, and the general never raised an eyebrow. You understand? I believe that they just played a power game against the West. You understand? Yeah. Maybe to elongate the narratives, but I don't want to delve into that issue. Then talking about strengthening ECOMOG, yes, definitely the West African Economic Community had a plan moving from ECOMOG to ECOWAS standby force. You understand? Talking about raising a number of troops that can intervene in crisis situations.
What happened to that plan?
Yeah, well, you know that is when you are hatching a plan and you're expecting maybe foreigners to fund the plan, definitely they will not be happy about it. Because some of these foreign interests, they thrive on the instability in African region. We can see the cases in Nigeria talking about the crisis in Zamfara. You know, you see a lot of foreign machinery coming there, mining on a large scale. You understand? And at least you now see illicit proliferation of small arms and light weapons, because they have to give these miners arms, creates instability for them to take whatever they want to take. So some of these issues, they move in pari passu. You understand? So when you are beginning to look at one, we have to look at these issues holistically. For example, we have crisis in Ukraine, but we're having crisis in Africa. If you look at the global response to the issue of Ukraine, that will tell you that they don't even consider Africans as human beings. Yeah. You see them having series of meetings, you know, putting funds together to support Ukraine and all these things. And even some of our African brothers overlook our immediate challenges here in Africa, and they're talking about Ukraine.
And they're going to support Russia.
You're going to support Russia. Look at the crisis in the Northwest. Look at the crisis in the Northeast. Look at the crisis all over West Africa and the Sahel region. You know, look at Sudan crisis. So if you look at these things holistically, you know that we're out of the equation. So I think it's high time we come together as a people and decide that it's not even foreign power that will solve our problem. I love Obasanjo's idea of African solution to African problem. So by the time we begin to harness those solutions, and then we begin to tackle our problem. And I think our leaders should equally tell themselves the truth. When they gather together, maybe in AU or ECOWAS or wherever, they should tell themselves the truth. Look, we've impoverished our people to the point of stupor. We need to create avenues, you know, to better the lives of our citizens.
Doctor, do you see any parallels between what is ongoing in Sierra Leone and Nigeria's recent elections that you referred to, particularly in terms of challenges to democratic consolidation, not just in West Africa, but in the whole of Africa?
Mr. Ruben, before I talk about democratic consolidation, we have to talk about it's what you have that you begin to consolidate on. If you look at, I've always been an advocate of, when you talk about democracy, I don't believe in Western democracy. One, you cannot bring something that is foreign or alien, and you bring it to people that are, you know, that are actually unaware of the system. Yes, democracy has been in Africa even before the intrusion of the West. For example, if you look at the Igbos, they have a segmentary system of democracy, or Republican system of government, whereby everybody is included in the administration of what? The system. That has been democracy. Is a type of Greek democracy. You understand? But when we bring an overdeveloped concept into a system that is underdeveloped, then it will give room to contradiction, and that is what we are facing here. We look at our culture, we look at our people and all these things. For example, you know that here there is no political tolerance. Oppositions, they see the struggle for the high premium on the struggle for power. The premium is so much, it's so high. You understand? It's as if it's winners takes it all. Because they know that when many of them, when they get there, they will not choose it to serve the interest of the masses. So comparing the two, all I know is that the last election, there were a lot of questions, but I won't say much because the matter is under litigation until the courts, decide before we can move from there.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ono, a Senior Research Fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs here in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.